Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us on the final installment of Community Matters Talk brought to you by NUS-ISS and NVPC. I'm Bethia from NUS-ISS Smart Health Leadership Center. Together with me is Kim.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Kim. I'm a certified change practitioner from ProSci. So today I'll share with you more about Edgar model.
Let's begin. So, what's the mental picture that comes to mind when you think of agility? Let's give ourselves 5 seconds to think of this mental picture. Okay, so for some of us, the mental picture that comes to mind is one that's trying to balance on a tightrope. Yeah, there's a lot of nimbleness involved. So for others, it might be trying to navigate through quicksand. Yeah, so it involves constant movement and changes to avoid being stuck in a nasty situation. But for me, the mental picture when we talk about agility is that of a stream flowing through the rocks. So when challenged by an obstacle, it is unfrazzled and it assesses its course and looks for the next alternative route based on circumstances. So are there many rocks along the stream? You bet. And similarly, agility in our business context means that the ability to adapt and change quickly amidst the rapidly evolving, ambiguous, and turbulent environment. You may be wondering, well, is agility a mainstayer or is it just another buzzword? Now, Agile methodology came about in the early 1990s when software manufacturers were struggling to meet the customers' demand because of slow development process. Remember a time when people rely on typewriter to type their documents? So in the case of electronic typewriter, the technology changes so fast before the developers could get their software to market, and it had largely become obsolete. So what's the lesson behind this? If we are not quick enough to learn or to adapt, we'll risk being pushed out of business. So, what does agility has to do with health and social care? Now, our world is increasingly interconnected. On our shore, our policies are nudging towards greater care integration. We can already see that in the case of Healthier SG, where there's a greater call for collaboration between your primary care providers like your GPs and also community partners such as Health Promotion Board, um, People's Association, and also Sport SG. So you can see from this diagram that the care delivery for the targeted segment doesn't just lie with one single party. Say, for instance, if you want to keep the youths at risk out of trouble, we don't just work with the school. We will also work with the social workers to ensure that they have somewhere safe to hang out after school, and the case workers also to ensure proper lodging, and perhaps the SSOs to help parents look for stable employment. Now, but having these multiple players also mean that when changes happen to a particular segment, it's likely to cause a ripple effect. So therefore, agility is important because it allows one to adapt and react fast to these changes while staying connected. All right. So before we could even talk about team or organizational agility, we need to first start with cultivating personal agility. So how do we do that? May I suggest that we can do that by adopting a growth mindset? So how many of you understand that our mindset has the power to affect how we act, which in turn determines the outcome? So I'll give you a very simple example. It's a constant life goal to try to lose weight. So I think many ladies here would empathize with me. We can never be slim enough, can we? Okay, so jokes aside, I believe that I can do, okay, so if I believe that I can do something to help myself, for example, exercising, eating mindfully and healthily, then I'm more likely to establish sustainable health habits to reach this ideal weight loss goal. But however, if I'm constantly stuck in a mindset that I'm dissatisfied with the way I look and just how tough the exercise regime is, so I'm more likely than not to be averse to exercise and fall out of my diet plan sooner than if I have a positive mindset. So as you can see, our mindset influences how we think, feel, and behave in a given situation. It means that what you believe about yourself impacts your success or failure. So you compare the self-talk on growth mindset on the right with the fixed mindset on the left. It is a very different way of framing our thoughts. The fixed mindset is limiting. It's almost like resigning to fate and believing that we cannot change and develop over time, whereas the growth mindset embraces possibilities. It helps us greatly in weathering the constant need for change. And so instead of seeing the challenge to lose weight as an insurmountable task, if I adopt a growth mindset, it will be something like I get to train myself and become stronger and fitter. And we will start seeing challenges as opportunities for growth and experiences. So this is the mindset we're talking about when we talk about personal agility. So now let me move on to organizational agility because we have already taken care of personal agility. All right. So there are plenty of tools out there for us to implement agility. So for instance, Scrum, sprints, retrospective, and Kanban board. In this short span of time, it would be impossible to cover all these concepts and methodologies. So I'll just leave you with 7 practical steps or pointers in keeping with organizational agility. Okay, so these are the 7. Not to worry, we'll cover them one by one. Okay, so as a leader, it is crucial for us to learn to empower people. So we're not only doing ourselves a favor by freeing up the time and the effort to make decisions, it's also an opportunity for growth for the people we're empowering and developing the organization at the same time. So I'll give you an example. I was activated during the very early days of COVID-19 to form a task force committee in the hospital I was working in then. So initially, we kept the team very small, just a few representatives from each department, but the majority of the stakeholders from the operations department. But we quickly realized that the battle is going to be a long drawn, and we have to call upon a bigger troop to keep the operations going. So this was when we started to recruit members from the various departments. Cross-functional teams were also set up to contribute to the management of COVID-19. And the turning point came when the commander in charge of the overall command center was not someone from the C-suite or the director level, but in a managerial position, and given their full autonomy to make decisions. And such empowerment was critical, especially when we were time-pressed. The commander was able to keep the command center running smoothly and only to escalate those special cases to the higher management for directives. Okay, so this brings me to the next point, that is to build autonomous teams. Here we go. Yep, and it's very closely linked to empowering people. Now, autonomous teams are made up of members from cross-functional departments with different competencies and skill sets. It cuts away the hierarchy, such as teams, and such teams are self-organizing to accomplish the set task. In this case of the COVID-19 Task Force Committee, it's made up of various departments across the hospital. Having a clear shared vision, that is to keep the infection rate at bay, and a strong alignment to the goal, that is to keep up with the evolving national policies on COVID management, the autonomous team was able to definitely make decisions with greater efficiency and maximizes productivity. So one other by-effect of the benefit, rather, that came out of this arrangement was that there's greater collaboration between members of the organization who might otherwise have very little opportunities to work together. So we'll look at the third point in organizational agility, and that's to deliver quickly and to iterate. Now, you may be wondering, how do we apply this point on delivering quickly and iterate for such an uncertain and complex situation like COVID-19? Well, the truth is, we didn't know better. So a lot of the staff members who were with the hospital during the SARS days were no longer around. So while some of us have varying degrees of disease management experience, nothing prepares us for this. So given this uncharted terrain, the team has used an iterative and incremental approach to deal with every new change. So case in point, despite all that's happening around us, patients still have to be seen, surgeries still have to proceed. But we recognize that with the situations developing every day, we cannot operate the surgical theatre at full patient load. So to give ourselves room to pivot, we had to cut down the elective surgery cases. So elective surgery means that those cases that's planned in advance and is not due to emergency. Then we realized that there were also COVID patients who require surgery. So each time this happened, we ensure that the adjoining surgical theatre was not in use. And we also block out extra resources to prevent the risk of viral transmission. So imagine along with me, every time we have a COVID patient who requires surgery, all these surgical instruments, your equipment, your facilities will have to undergo thorough sterilization after use. So before we could even get to this new workflow, the cases just increased exponentially. With our manpower and resources stretched to the brim, we have to iterate again. And this time round, it was decided to judiciously postpone these non-critical elective procedures. Now, the team has to use an iterative and incremental approach to come up with a new protocol and to improve the processes to meet the evolving changes. So you can see in the midst of an uncertain and volatile situation, we have to keep pivoting and iterating to deliver services to meet the demands of situation. So therefore, as leaders, it is so essential for us to embrace a growth mindset so that we don't get burnt out ourselves from the constant need to change. And that brings me to the fourth point, to be data-driven. Now, how do we know if we're on the right track if we do not have a set of metrics to measure performance or outcomes? Sometimes it's just because we are very familiar with our routine or have great efficiency in getting the work done, it doesn't mean that we're meeting the client's expectation. So to guide us in making an informed decision, not merely basing on our opinions, we need to start collecting data. And it's crucial to start collecting this data where data is generated and to collect this data throughout the entire process journey. So again, using COVID-19 as an example, without the data on stockpile, for example, say surgical masks, PPE, or N95, for example. So how then would I know when I will run out of it? How then can I make an informed decision regarding its usage and dissemination to relevant places? Yes, so therefore, start making use of this powerful resource within your organization that's your very rich data source. So, coming to the next point, in business process reengineering, we often talk about removing bottlenecks and non value added activities. And this is also true in the case of organizational agility. As a leader, we owe it to our staff to remove all the unnecessary processes passed down from our predecessors that no longer make sense. To give you an example, in the past, whenever a doctor wants to refer a patient to a specialist, he or she will fax a referral letter over to the specialist center. Now, on the receiving end, the staff will have to log in the details, etc. And we all know the reliability of fax can sometimes be very questionable. So, as a staff who fax over the referral letter, you have to call the specialist center to ensure that the referral letter has gone through. Now, fast forward to today's time. Imagine with all the technological advances, emails, NEHR, NGEMR, and what have you, the processes that I've just described will become obsolete. Now, if I don't go about updating my processes, I'm likely to see many of these redundant legacy processes hanging around. So therefore, if we want to make our organization more agile or nimble, as leaders, please enforce a periodic review of processes to get rid of these non-value adding activities. Now, on pointer 6, on tightly managing work in progress, I think most of us had this sort of frustrating experience when we want someone at work to pull their weight, but only to be told that they're busy. We don't know what they're busy with, but they're just busy. Sounds familiar? As a leader, how do we then ensure that there is no freeloader in the team? I have a quick and dirty way, solution rather, to instill transparency in work progress, and this is to make. This is also used to closely manage work in progress, and that is a Kanban board. Okay, so that's how a Kanban board looks like. So Kanban board is widely used in project management, but really its usefulness extends beyond project management. A Kanban board not only helps me to keep track of the tasks that's in progress, but it also highlights tasks that are non-moving so that active steps can be taken to remove the obstacles or bottlenecks. So the other feature which I personally like a lot is the parking lot, or commonly known as the to-do column. So it allows you to input the upcoming tasks so that you can set aside adequate time and resources to improve the flow of work. So my team at the ISS Smart Health Leadership Center, we make use of the Kanban board a lot for our regular team meetings. So far, it has provided us with great visibility of each other's task and provide more avenues for collaboration, share ideas to remove bottlenecks, and of course, improve our resource management. Now we're coming to the last point, that is to create a culture of continuous improvement. So as leaders, the idea is not to clone ourselves, but to strive to create a troop that is constantly improving and becoming even better than ourselves. So in other words, if you want an army that is self-sustaining and always creating better ways of working, how do we get there? I bet anyone who has done change management before would agree with me that to change a culture is one of the hardest things to do in organizational development. But it is so essential if we want certain practices to be part of our organizational DNA. So here, I would like to introduce you to a quick concept called culture hacking. Culture hacking is all about finding the little things that we can do every day to create a positive, iterative change, instead of huge transformative efforts that will scare people off, especially those who are very resistant to change. Culture hacking is about making small, intentional adjustments to the culture for big results. So, if you're going to put this into practice, how does it look like for us? So, I have a few suggestions. Say, for instance, instead of having a yearly employee climate survey, why not have a focused pulse survey, say every quarterly? Or perhaps there are some meetings which are held on a regular basis, which are just an information download session. How about canceling those meetings and change the mode of delivery to email instead? There are plenty of these small steps you can take to move towards a bigger change you would like to see. So all these steps would not be possible without a good change management strategy. So with that, I would like to introduce our next speaker, Senior Lecturer Ms. Kim Loh, who is also our change master, and she will share more with us on change leadership. Kim, please.
Thank you, Bethia. Have you realized when you talk about a change, about how you are making for the better in your personal lives, you often feel more energetic? Whether it's picking up a new hobby, hiking with old friends, or learning new skills, most people focused on positive psychological space when it comes to self-transformation. The sense of excitement, it's really recognizable. Now, there is another type of transformation that occupies different psychological space, the organizational transformation. When you hear the word change or transformation, like most people, the first thing comes to mind, oh, that ticklish, squirmy feeling as if you are standing on a high ledge, or you get a feeling that you have got butterflies in your stomach. I'm sure some of you have had experience such situation in your professional lives before. What if change were an acronym? What would it be? Constant havoc amongst needy grumbling employees, causing headache and needy good explanations. We might laugh because it's funny, right? But that's true. Change is a disruption. It is a disruption to the status quo. In this VUCA world, we all agree that change is constant. But how can you effectively manage change? How do we prepare, equip, and support our people to adopt and transit to new ways of working? Let me tell you a story. The Fisherman and Consultant. Has anyone heard of this story before? A management consultant on holiday in a Mexican fishing village watched a little fishing boat dock at the quayside. Noting the quantity and quality of the fish, the consultant asked the fisherman how long it had taken to catch them. Not very long, senor, answered the fisherman. Then, why didn't you stay out longer and catch more? Asked the consultant. The fisherman explained that his small catch was sufficient to meet his needs and those of his family. The consultant asked, "But what do you do with the rest of your time?" "I sleep late, fish a little, play with my children, have an afternoon nap under a coconut tree. In the evenings, I will play guitar with my amigos and a few drinks." I have a full and happy life, senor, replied the fisherman. The consultant ventured, "Look, I have an MBA from Harvard, and I can help you. You should start by fishing longer every day. You can then sell the extra fish you catch. With the extra revenue, you can buy a bigger boat. With the extra money, the larger boat will bring, you can buy a second one and a third one, and so on, until you have a large fleet. Instead of selling your fish to the middleman, you can negotiate directly with the so-called the processing plants and maybe even open your own plant. You can then leave this little village and move to a city, from where you can direct your huge enterprise." "How long would that take, senor?" asked the fisherman. "Oh, 10 or maybe 20 years, replied the consultant. "And after that, senor?" asked the fisherman. "After that, that's when it gets really interesting," answered the consultant, laughing. "When your business gets really big, you can start selling shares in your company and make millions." "Millions? Really? And after that, senor?" pressed the fisherman. "After that, you'll be able to retire, move out to small village by the sea, sleep in late every day, spend time with your family, go fishing, take afternoon naps under a coconut tree, and spend relaxing evenings having drinks with amigos." Puzzled, the fisherman answered, "Isn't that what I'm already doing, senor?" Now, this story can be critical for the fisherman attitude and aptitude, but that's not the takeaway for this session. Instead, it's about different individual perceives change differently from their own perspective, from their own hilltop. How do you, as a change leader, helps them seeing change through Edgar lenses? Let's be honest here. Change is hard. Change is complex. People naturally resist change, especially if it affects them. Then, how do you deal with it? How do you win the buy-in? Empirical studies shown that the change has to begin with individual. Organizational change is a collective of many individuals moving from their current state to a future desired state. So what is EDCA? It is a structured change management approach, preparing leaders for facilitating change and supporting employees throughout the change progress. It was developed by Jeff Hyatt in 1990s. It is easy to understand and simple to follow. By understanding EDCA model, you can give you a greater chance of making your change successful. This model can be used be it in your professional or your personal life. Now, EDCA is a structured approach made up of 5 steps, when an individual needs to accomplish with each step building upon previous steps. I'll start with the first step, awareness for the need of the change. This first step is preparing for change is to answer the question why. By understanding the why, it gives people compelling reasons for change. Why the answer why? Why do we need to answer the why first? Let's put it this way. It's Monday, 9:45 a.m. You have completed your slides for a presentation at 10. You have decided to take a 10 minutes break before heading to the meeting room. While you are enjoying your morning Americano, your boss comes to you and says, "Hey, I need you to prepare this report for me, and I need this by 10. What's the first thing come into your mind? Hold on, you don't have to tell me. Now, because there is a change to your current behavior, the very first question comes into your mind is usually why. Why me? Why now? The same goes to others. The why gives us the reason to alter our current comfortable behavior. Next, you need to address the how. How will this change going to affect them? How will this change going to impact them? And lastly, the what. What is the purpose of this change? What is your belief that you want to change? Generally, people are unable to perform in their job because they don't understand why they need to do it, how are they going to do it, and what are they supposed to achieve. In many high-performing organizations like Apple and Google, employees are engaged in their work. They are committed and play an active role in order to step up of their comfort zone because they understand why there is a need for the change, the purpose for the change, and how this change going to impact them and what it means for them. The next is the desire to participate and support the change. Desire is the second letter of ADKAR. This is the hardest ADKAR element in organizational change because it involves personal choices of each individual. Anyone familiar with theory of motivations by Abraham Maslow? Maslow's hierarchy of needs states that our actions are motivated by our inborn desire to progress and finally to achieve self-actualization. Hence, it is important not to overlook the question, what's in it for me, during your change preparation. Based on my past experiences, it is important to have intensive dialogue and get the affected party to involve, particularly at the design phase of your project. Make your meetings a safe space for honest conversation. Active participations from sponsors, personal engagement by change leaders, coaches, and change champions will be able to influence a person's decisions to embrace change. The theory of reasoned action by Fishbein and Agent suggests that the stronger the individual's intentions towards change, more likely to transform only when others are performing the desired behavior in a supportive environment. The next will be the knowledge. Knowledge is the third milestone of ADKAR, highlights the know-how necessary for the affected people. Provide the employees with the necessary information or skills they need to achieve change. This can be done through newsletters, webinars, trainings, and also some of the mentoring sessions. Now, the fourth elements of ADKAR is about the ability to implement desired skills and behaviors. Remember, knowledge is not an ability. Once they have equipped with the necessary knowledge, they must be able to demonstrate proficiency where the change actually occurs. Ability is the fourth milestone of ADKAR, and it highlights how to get things done by turning knowledge into action. Change is an iterative process. As a change leader, you need to keep your eyes and ears on the ground. Know how things are going, identify and monitor potential barriers. Give credits even to those who have failed, as this is one of the great ways to encourage and motivate those who struggle. It also helps to make the change process easier to endure and as well as to adapt. The final milestone is the reinforcement. It's about how do we sustain the change. The purpose of reinforcement is to ensure change actually sticks instead of reverting to old habits. Why? Because most people prefer what is familiar because it's easy and make them comfortable. At this stage, you bound to have people who may continue resist to change or even after the project is completed. Diffusion of innovation theory, developed by E.M. Rogers in 1960s, states that the laggards are the hardest and the last group to be on board. As a change leader, it is important to continue monitor and update the change progress, share success stories, and celebrate milestones. This is to ensure people are aware of the progress and what are the works still need to be done. Now, there's this a fantastic quote by Benjamin Franklin. There are three types of people in the world: those who are immovable, people who don't get it or don't want to do anything about it. There are people who are movable, people who see the need for change and are prepared to listen to it. And finally, there are people who move, people who make things happen. And great leaders move people to act and to come together to build city of good. Then that's what we need. Thank you. Back to you, Batia.
Before we enter a time of Q&A, please help us by scanning the QR code on screen to do a short post-event survey. Let us know what you think of today's talk and what you would like to hear more of for future events. Okay, thank you very much. We hope that you find this session useful. So if you have any questions, feel free to type in the chat. Earlier, we saw a question by Caroline. So let's try to address that. Is it similar to Kaizen? So to answer your question, this agile, organizational agile model is not easy, yes and no answer. Certain aspect of it is a bit similar to Kaizen. So by that, I mean in pointer number 3, when we want to deliver quickly and iterative. So Kaizen by in and of itself, right, is a small incremental step improvement to our process. So that, right, itself will be part of Kaizen. So we look at the process and we make small little changes. But if we look at organizational agility on the whole, say for instance, on pointer number 5, in simplifying the process, typically we use other tools such as business process re-engineering or business process improvement to relook at the process to remove bottlenecks or non-value activities. And then agility has got two opposing ends. One is targeting at dynamism. The other one is to offer stability. So in this aspect, when we want all this the previous pointers mentioned is to enhance dynamism in our processes, in how we run things. But in terms of providing the stability, we need a very strong culture to anchor us down, which is why in pointer number 7, we mentioned to build a culture of continuous improvement. In this way, it strikes a fine balance between dynamism and also stability. Yep. Okay, so let's see. We do have another question. Just a moment. Okay, regarding the ECHA model, maybe Kim would like to take this?
Yes, regarding the ECHA model, according to Anisha, if one of them is not achieved, what are the consequences to look out for? Now, ECHA is actually a milestone. My very best advice is that your first two element, which is the awareness and desire, if you do it right, you will be actually halfway to success. Meaning that your communications plan is very important. And if let's say that you know a specific group of people who refuse to change, don't just focus on that specific group, because as I mentioned before, the law of diffusion of innovation, that theory, focus on the early adopters. Meaning that before you get to know the early adopters, you need to know do a so-called the landscape survey. Get to know who are your early adopters, who are your early majority and the late majority. Because as long as your early adopters becomes your ally and are confident, this will help you to move your so-called change management plan smoothly. I hope I addressed your question, Anisha.
Okay, any more questions coming up? If not, thank you very much for your time. Thank you for spending your Friday afternoon with us. So do look out for future talks. If you want to go review our past videos, please log on to YouTube under NUS-ISS for more of such videos. We thank you once again and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.